Guys, welcome to this Q&A with Sony PlayStation. I think from our side, we're very excited to have Mario over here, which will join us shortly. Mario is the CEO of Gamefinity. And we just want to say, Mario, thank you for taking your time in joining us today. We really do appreciate the time.
Only a pleasure, Brian. Happy to speak to you guys. It's exciting time.
It really is. I think the anticipation over Sony PlayStation 5 has been building up, I think, from our side. I think, for the past 2 years, we've just been wondering, when is it coming? They've kept it quite silent. The announcement came and, gee, that console sold out very quickly, didn't it?
It's been a crazy response. I mean, not only but obviously around the world, as you guys well know. I think it's in truth it's caught everyone off guard, right from the guys at the top of Sony.
And then Mario, that obviously brings a bit of a question from our side. The pre-order side from Sony, they've sort of come out with an apology saying, sorry, some of the retailers jumped the gun. Was it the same sort of situation here in South Africa that happened in?
No, I think, we were given the go-ahead. Obviously, Sony's got obviously a global business office, but then obviously they got North America, and then Europe, and then obviously Japan. And we were to go on Thursday, which we went and everybody went on time. And there was one or two guys actually went a little late to market, but it didn't matter because they were sold out anyway a little later. But we met all the we stuck within the protocols. There were lots, as you'd imagine, in terms of communication.
No, I'm well aware of how Sony works and operates, and I think whatever they do it really well, and the fans have really responded to that. Then Mario, I think from a sort of pre-order side, we've heard that Sony are releasing more units for pre-order after the initial release. Is this a global thing, or do you think we'll see a few more pre-orders come the way of South Africans who are really eagerly anticipating more than have missed out in the pre-orders?
At this stage, because certain territory, every territory was able to do, had their own bespoke strategy in terms of how many units they went out with pre-order. Obviously, we were fairly tight allocation, so we went with our full allocation as pre-order. However, as soon as we know when our next inbound ship is, we'll also, it's most likely that we'll have another pre-order allocation, probably somewhere around mid-October. We should be able to communicate. We'll give the fans a bit of time to prepare.
And that'll be announced from the sort of websites and stuff from Sony PlayStation South Africa directly on social media as well? Okay,
yes.
So...
as you'd imagine, all the consoles are going to be shipped into us. There's and they ship to most territories. Obviously, we're right on the tip of Africa, so it's not going to be an exact timing of that pre-order. So when we know it's on the ship and when it's due to land, there we'll make the announcement. Obviously, we'll announce to people and give people a heads up from our local, obviously all our social media platforms to the fans to let them know when we'll be having another allocation of pre-order.
Tell me, and on that note, how many sort of numbers were allocated to South Africa? Is that information you can share with us on the initial pre-order list?
Unfortunately, I can't. We're not at liberty, and also, but if I can take the opportunity to say is we're very proud of the fact that we actually did get an allocation. There's territories that are going day two. And I guess it's really a function of how amazing the fans have been for 20 odd years that has been able to support us getting an allocation, because territories, in some of them bigger than us, like India and Turkey, are not going to be day one markets. So although, I know there's lots of people feeling aggrieved about the allocation, and I've had absolutely every retailer phoning and saying, why can't we get more? The truth is we did have a small allocation. It was somewhat, probably 10 or 20% less than we did on PS4, but I'm still relieved that in fact we did get some.
Yeah, but I think also seeing from sort of our side, we were also worried: are we going to get on release day, which I think it's a week later from our territory, but at least we are getting on the launch period. So I think everyone is excited about that. And then you mentioned obviously the next sort of batch of pre-orders might come around October. The expected shipment, when do you think that's going to come for the fans? And then do you think these stock levels for like the Christmas period, will there be enough for the fans at the end of the day?
It's difficult to say, Brian. But I mean, there will be, as I said, there will be another allocation before Christmas. So kind of we're kind of hoping that meets most of certainly the day one demand and the real kind of indulger, as we call them, fan. But truth be told, I'm not convinced that any will make the shelf at all. If we kind of able let the retailers pre-sell all the units. So I doubt there will be any before Christmas on shelf.
And just on that note, obviously when the message does come out, will it be a sort of announcement that we'll do a second batch of pre-orders where the fans can sort of get onto their desktops or in front of stores the day before those that really want to get a hold of them? Or do you think it's just
Yes, we're going to be giving a bit of a heads up. So, I mean, there's no definitive strategy, but probably let people know a couple of days ahead of time, and we'll start communicating on all our social media platforms.
Awesome. And then everyone obviously has been talking about the SSD from Sony, and it is, from my understanding, spectacular. Do you know really what does that for the SSD? What have they done differently to previous consoles and SSDs that are available on the market at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, when they presented some of the technology to us, I mean, I'm not a super tech guy, so excuse me, but it was mind blowing for them, when they were showing us the difference between a PS4 loading and a PS5 loading. I mean, it literally is 100 times faster in terms of load than on a PS4, which is kind of difficult to fathom considering. I mean, it's PS4 loads. I mean, we don't have too many complaints about that. So it's the technology is obviously proprietary to Sony on that, and so but importantly, besides the loading time and all expectations are that games will load in less than a second. What it has given developers is given them the opportunity to, rather than kind of add extra data onto disks where they mirror the same scenes over and over again, so that there's no loading time issues. They don't have to do that. So it's more likely that you won't get these massive patches on day one of a game because the disc will have the bulk of the game on it. So it's certainly going to give the gameplay experience. It's going to bring it into another dimension.
Then on the two consoles that were launched, which was the digital edition and the disc edition, personally, which is your favorite of the two, or which would you pick if you had to go for?
I'm still a little. I have to say, I'm still a creature of habit. So I would still go for the disc. I still like having to, collecting my games and kind of, sometimes reminiscing and going back to them. Otherwise, some you tend to forget once you've, played them, and you seldom ever go back to them if you're just kind of in the digital space. So I'm still absolutely a disc option fan.
I think myself as well, fortunately. I think it just does give you that added value from a console.
Yeah.
I think the thing with the digital, what we have seen is obviously the numbers are about 10 to 20% of the disc versions that are currently released. But that does bring a question which I do want to ask, and I'm also aware that you do, you're the CEO rather of Kudu as well. How does that affect the digital pre-orders rather? How do you think that can affect retailers? And if people are going into a digital market, how can we still support our favorite local retailers having a digital version of the console?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very, very real question. And obviously, kind of in our world, we're in that same space where, as a purely distributor of physical product, one of our challenges is to find a space in that value chain, because there is going to be disintermediation at some point. I think the size of the games, and I think historically, South African, and particularly the South African consumer, and we saw it with our DVD market as well, is still very physical. So I think we'll do lag the rest of the world, certainly in kind of as a percentage in terms of digital. In terms of the splits, we've obviously forecast quite a significant split from obviously very, very biased towards the disc version. So I still think there's going to be lots of value for the retailer, and also, I mean, as you now know, there's a wider range of peripherals available on PS5 than there even was on PS4. So that gives them kind of a broader category to be able to focus on. So, I think there's more than made up in terms of the peripheral array that's been available.
Speaking of obviously the peripherals or the accessories, as some would call, which are you most eager to try? I think from my side, I'm really keen to hear obviously the headset with the sound, but yourself, the controllers with the haptic feedback.
Yeah, I mean the DualSense. I've had a little bit of an opportunity to test out Astrobot on the DualSense, and it's. I mean, it takes you a couple of. It'll certainly take a couple of minutes before you actually can get your head around what it's doing. So it's a strange sensation, and people are going to love it. I really am super excited for it. But I'm glad you've mentioned the headset. That is, in terms of from an attachment perspective, and on a pre-order perspective, that's been one area that's been kind of over-indexed. So, I would, and I'm not doing a sales pitch, but I would encourage people, if they want to get one, a better pre-buy, because there is going to be an allocation issue, because those have really we've had a great response on those beyond the other peripherals.
Look, I was fortunate enough, obviously, to get my headset today on pre-order. And I think what it is for most South Africans, obviously, as well, is that initial swallowing either 10 or 12,000 rand is quite difficult for them, and they almost had to wait a week or two before they could actually really get to the next step. I do think, obviously, from a call it Kuru side or BT Games sort of perspective as well, that things will start picking up there after that, because I think everyone wants those peripherals. I think it was just that initial swallowing of 12,000 was tricky. I'm not gonna lie, but we've saved for it most of the time. It was still tricky taking it out after the whole events of COVID. But everyone's excited at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, Brian, I get that, and it is. I mean, it's not it's not a small spend. So to spend 12,000 rand just on the console, I absolutely get it. It's not easy for everyone, particularly in our current dire circumstances. But the consideration is always the PS4 has been around 8 years. So it's an investment in a piece of tech. That's not just for a year or two like a mobile phone or the like. So and as you well know, that what's expected to come down the line from the additional technology, and that the guys update all the time. It's I think it's still, in these days, it's still a great investment. I mean, as you well know, if you try and put that kit together from a PC perspective, you're 30,000 rand plus. So that's I guess that's the way some of us kind of have to look at it.
Yeah, and I think also from my own personal side, I looked at upgrading my Apple Series watch from 3 to 6, and I realized quite quickly that itself, the watch was more expensive than the PlayStation. And obviously, PlayStation could bring us a lot more enjoyment than the watch, but I think people don't understand that PlayStation at 12,000 rand, or an iPhone at 35. And one's going to bring you a lot more enjoyment. It's going to last a whole while longer as well. I think one thing I would maybe mention is that I know that Xbox do have, obviously, other territories, they've got like a monthly payment option. Do you think that is maybe something that this market could do with in the future?
Look, it's something we have investigated, and it's. I mean, the commercials just don't stack up. It's a difficult one to put together from a financial services regulatory kind of perspective. We have pitched a few times to Sony on a few different options. I don't want to say more, but look, there'll be a message in this space in the next couple of months.
That's good to hear that. And, obviously, the big one as well, PlayStation Now. Is there any news of that coming to this territory at any point, or any speculation perhaps?
Yeah, so we're on the roadmap. When I say roadmap, it's moved a little. I mean, at PlayStation Now, as everyone knows, it was a little soft to start, even in the territories that it did launch in. I mean, they've done lots of development, and they've added lots and lots of content. So now it's become a kind of a real play. But there's, from a regulatory perspective, we're not an easy market to launch in. We see, there's still, even on the film side, with Netflix and all of these, there's still lots of competitions issues, lots of vet and regulatory issues. So, we're on the roadmap. I really can't comment in terms of when that will be, but we certainly, hopefully, not too far away in terms of a year or so.
Then another question, which goes back to the stream that was live with Sony. Watching it, it was very exciting, and then looking back at it a bit later, you realize that I'm going to use this in a dollar term, but from Sony's side, the standard edition a game actually $10 overnight, which they kind of stuck in there. We understand, obviously, the games are going to work better and look better and what have you. But do you think this is also due to maybe the hype that's currently going with the PlayStation 5? And do you think maybe those standard editions will come back to the 1,000 rand in the future?
No, I to be perfectly honest with you, Brian, it really wasn't anything to do with the hype at all. I mean, this discussion's been bandied around for a couple of years now. It's only obviously, and I'm sure at all of the publishers, games have been the same price, for the last 10 years. Yet the cost of development as it's gone up threefold. And particularly at launch, there's a small volume of consoles in market to try and recoup that back. So it's a heavy investment from a developer's perspective and from a publishing perspective. So it's really not a function of the hype at all. It's just more, I guess, a reference to how much more investment in pure dollars and in resources that go into these games. I mean, you know some of the amount of hours and development that goes into these games.
Look, I must agree with you there, because I think I've been on PlayStation for probably close to 24 years or something, as long as it's been out. My memory is not always that great. But it almost feels like, there has been, from the early stages where you used to play a game on every month, where the longevity of the games are a lot longer these days, and they are putting a lot more work into it. So I think they do justify the price. It's almost like the best game's going to win at the end of the day, where I think maybe the smaller titles are going to start seeing a bit more or a lot of revenue, don't you think, being that the fact that they're also expensive?
Exactly right. I mean, it's not. I often say to my colleagues at work, the gaming industry exactly the same way the film industry went. It's going to be about the big franchises. Kind of, you see it in the movie side. It's all about the Warner and the DC worlds and the superhero world. And that's what delivers the numbers. It's going to be the same way that we're seeing that same consolidation. I mean, there's always going to be the place for the niche game and, for the niche gamers. But I think from an absolute mass market stuff, it's going to be the big franchises it's going to consolidate into those.
And then I've got one final question for you, but we're going to almost split it into two, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Obviously, PlayStation 5 and the next-gen consoles have a lineup of games. Which are you most looking forward to? And I think if we look back on your time with PlayStation, which game have you most enjoyed previously, before this launch?
I think anyone knows me anywhere, kind of even from a distance, will know that I'm a massive God of War fan. So it was exciting to see at the last showcase last week, in terms of kind of that it is coming to PlayStation 5. That's super, super crazy and super exciting. But from a launch lineup perspective, I guess, I mean, truth be told, the one that surprised me most and is looking, we expected Spider-Man to look amazing and all, certainly the Miles Morales edition in that world. But I think the one that stood out for me is Demon's Souls. So, kind of when we first heard it, I thought, I'm not so sure. But I think that's going to be the silent sleeper, certainly at launch.
I'm 100% agreeing with you on that. Spider-Man wasn't too long ago, and I think, Demon's Souls is going to be a game that's going to take everyone by surprise. And I think going back on your God of War, I'm also a massive fan. But I must say the Ghost of Tsushima for me was an absolute that was incredible. And also,
funny you mention that, because that's typically, just to give you some little bit of insight, typically we reorder on a title probably 3 or 4 times a year. Kind of if it all runs according to plan. On Ghost of Tsushima, we kind of almost do double-digit orders in from Sony. So we've had a great response to it, and it's been really well received by the gamers. So yeah, that's again, we're excited to get some of those. We don't always, some go the other way, but when one does good for us, we will certainly take it.
Yeah, and I think maybe the orders of Ghost of Tsushima came at the right time. Obviously, we were, I think, in the heart of COVID at that stage. People couldn't go outdoors, and everyone saw this trailer, and it just looked phenomenal. And gameplay-wise, this is, and I think we look forward to any more from Sony's teams.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Then from our side, we obviously want to just say thank you so much for taking your time here. And then to the guys that are watching, we're going to have a PlayStation Q&A again tomorrow morning. But we're going to have it from the fan side. So the fans will be asking the questions tomorrow. And Mario, I think there might be a few difficult ones out there for you, but I'm sure you've got them covered.
I certainly hope so. There's always a few that'll get me, but I'm going to give it my best shot.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mario.
Thanks, Brian. Enjoy your afternoon.